So now that we have a basic physics setup inside of our Unity scene, I want to I want to start to look at adding scripts to promote interactivity inside our scene. So we'll take a look at scripts, we'll make it interactive, so we'll give it some user control, and then we'll make another pass at the physics, look at some of the other options that we have to implement and to tweak our physics, and then we'll have a simple little playable game on our hands. So at this point, I want to take a quick look at scripts. The way that scripts work inside Unity is that we can attach scripts to certain objects to give them different kinds of properties. And in this case, we're going to download a script that I've provided inside Blackboard. So if you look after video 4, there is a force01.js.zip file. I'll just give that a right click. I'll choose to save link as, and I'll save that directly to my desktop. Now, once I download it to my desktop, I'll double click on it to unzip it. And once I do, I have this force01.js script. Now that's a JavaScript. I'll go back into Unity and we'll take a look at exactly what the JavaScript is doing in just a short bit. But when it comes to Unity, a lot of the interactivity and customization that we can get inside of our game will come through scripting. Now we're not going to do a whole lot of scripting in this class because once we get into Playmaker, or I should say we're not going to do a lot of coding in this class. When we get to building interactivity into our games and start doing some really significant scripting, we're going to use a visual scripting tool, Playmaker, that I mentioned when I introduced this class. But for now, what we want to do is we want to get kind of the basic concepts down for applying scripts to different objects so that we can add interactivity and kind of enhance the user experience. And so I've downloaded my force1.js script, and I want to integrate that directly into my Unity project. Once I do that, then we'll take a look at the script itself. Now there's a couple different ways that I can do this, but the easiest thing to do, and the preferred way to do this, is I'm going to go into my assets folder. So I'm looking at the contents of my assets here. I'm going to right click and choose to create a new folder. This new folder, I'm going to name it scripts. So now I have a scripts folder in the root of the asset folder. I'll take this force01.js and I'll just drop that right into my scripts folder. Now I'll go into the scripts folder and I'll take a closer look at this JavaScript. So when I single click on this script, if I look over here in the property inspector, this shows me the contents of the entire script. So this just gives me kind of a preview. It lets me know what's in the script, and the script is fairly basic. If I double click on this script, you'll see that it opens up in a program called MonoDevelop. Now this came with Unity. It's packaged with Unity and it's inside the Unity folder. And you can see here that I have my MonoDevelop application open, and when I double click on a script, it pops open in MonoDevelop. So this script has a couple of different components to it, but basically it's saying we're establishing a force value. There's a function here that establishes a character controller, which is some user input on our keyboard. And then we apply force to an object based on the user input. There's also a second function here that has to do with the Fire 1 button, which in the case of the Fire 1 button, that's the left click of the mouse. So we have some basic controls here. We have some horizontal and vertical input. The vertical input has been limited to 0, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. It's not so important that we know exactly what's going on in the script point by point, but just that the basic functionality of this script is that a variable is established called the force. This is the amount of force that we're going to use to influence the object. The next bit is that we establish character controller or user input, and then we apply that user input to translate that to force. So I'm just going to close this script. I'm going to take the force script and I'm going to drag and drop that onto my sphere. Okay, now before I do that, I just want to give you a quick tour, remind you what my sphere looks like. It's just a standard sphere object, but I did apply a component physics rigid body, and I can see that rigid body component here. Once I have a rigid body, I can start to utilize this force script. I'm going to drag and drop the force script directly on the sphere. Alternatively, if I had the sphere selected, I could drag and drop the force script into the inspector. Now when I do that, you'll see that we get another component that pops up, and this component is saying that it's a script. The title of the script is force01. it reminds us that we have a link to the script, and if I click on that link, it'll highlight that asset here in the asset folder. And just below that, we have what's called a public variable. It's called the force, and the force is set to a value of 10. Now, I'm gonna hit the play button, and now when I do, I can use the A and D keys to control my sphere. So I can push to the right, or the D key, and that pushes my sphere to the right. If I hold down the A key, it pushes it to the left. There is some functionality that allows us to push it back and forth, but I have limited that in this script, and I've zeroed that out. If I press and hold the fire button, it starts to lift the ball up ever so slightly, and if I just keep pressing down, you'll see it slowly floats up and hovers. We're doing this with a rigid body apply force, so we're taking control of the physics engine, or more appropriately, we're taking control of the sphere and applying force as it relates to the physics engine inside Unity. So at this point, if I just toggle my play button, I have a little bit of control here. I can use my A and D keys to push the ball left and right. Now, it is important to note that if I select my camera, and I'll just zoom out to show you this, my camera is looking down the Z-axis of my world space. So in other words, if I were to orient my camera in a different direction, left and right wouldn't make sense, because this script currently is designed to apply force along the X-axis. So in other words, if my camera is looking down the Z-axis like this, when I hold the A and D keys, I'm pushing that ball left and right. Okay? So in other words, if your camera has a different orientation, if you place your camera and you're looking down the X-axis in the direction of the red X-axis here, and I'm looking up here at the widget to reference this, you're going to get different results. And so the trick is when you attach this script, when you hit play, if your ball moves to and from the camera, you know that you have your camera orientation set wrong. So experiment with this, give this a shot, attach the script, see if you can get some basic functionality in here of pushing the ball to the left and to the right. And then in the next presentation, we'll do a quick pass and we'll take a look at some other properties that can be found within the physics component. And then we'll make another pass just to kind of dress the scene up to make it look a little bit more interesting, look a little more aesthetically pleasing, and then we'll wrap up this project. So experiment with that force script, download it, attach it to your sphere, and get it to function to push the ball left and right, and continue to put different kind of obstacles and bumpers inside your scene to see what you can come up with. But we'll catch up in the next presentation and enhance this just a bit more.